Welcome to Kingdom Insight with Dr. L.K. Leonard, raising saints back to God through clarity, structure, and spiritual authority. In episode 1, we talked about why leaders drift. In episode 2, we discussed restoring alignment. In episode 3, we focused on protecting ministry culture. And in episode 4, we talked about guarding leadership disciplines. But today we want to go deeper. We're going to go deeper because even disciplined leaders can become overwhelmed if they don't learn how to lead without losing themselves. Ministry is demanding, leadership carries weight, people have expectations, situations can be draining. And if leaders are not careful, they will pour out so much that they begin to lose themselves in the process. Today, I want to talk about leading without losing yourself. The first thing is you cannot pour from an empty place. You cannot pour from an empty place. Mark chapter 6, verse 31 says, "Come away by yourself to a desolate place and rest a while." The disciples had just returned from ministry and they were active, effective, and busy. But Jesus recognized something they did not. They were depleted. And Jesus didn't say, do more. He said, come away. And that reveals something powerful. Activity does not equal sustainability. I believe I said that again. Activity does not equal sustainability. Many leaders confuse busyness with productivity. You look busy, you're doing things, you're into things, and that's not actually productivity. They measure effectiveness by how much they do, but that's not really. You're just doing a lot of nothing. But Jesus measured sustainability by whether they could step away and be renewed. This teaches us that leadership is not sustained by constant outpour. It's sustained by intentional renewal. You have to be intentional in your renewal. You got to step away and you got to get some rest. There are two types of leaders. Those who only pour out and those who pour out and refill. You hear what I'm saying? There are two types of leaders. They got the one that only pours out, and then there's the one that pours out and then he refills. The first group eventually burns out. That you just watch. Keep looking. If you keep pouring out and keep pouring out, you're gonna burn out. The second group remains effective long term. When you pour out and then you refill, you have to refill. You cannot pour out things and not refill. You can't run your car all week long and not refill it because it's gonna be depleted. You have to pour out and then you have to refill. When leaders do not build a rhythm of rest, they begin to operate from fatigue into the focus. You often see the sneaker commercial when they don't eat, they become angry and they change. The person changes. They're not the same person that they were because they're going through something. And a lot of times leaders become, they begin to get fatigued and they lose their focus and they can't focus because the fatigueness has them. You ever seen those commercials where people get in the desert and they're tired and a mirage come, they think they see water, they're so thirsty, they think they see water. And sometimes you're doing so much that you think you see one thing and you really don't see. So they become more reactive than reflective. You're reacting to things now. You're not reflecting on the things that you used to reflect on, but you're reacting to them because you're tired. You become tired and you're not clear and you become more drained than being direct. So rest is not weakness. Rest is a part of alignment. And if you don't build a rhythm of renewal, your leadership will eventually be driven by exhaustion instead of clarity. Your leadership is going to be. So ask yourself, when was the last time I intentionally stepped away to be refilled? I said, listen to what I said. Ask yourself, when was the last time I stepped away to be refilled? A lot of people don't want to step away. They think if they step away, then that something's going to happen and people are going to do this. You have to step away to be refilled. You cannot always be there. And if you're always pouring out and you never get any rest, people tell me you need to get some rest, and it's true. You need to be rest to be focused. When you was in school, they told you to get a good night's rest, eat breakfast, and so you can be focused the next day to take the test. The second thing is emotional health matters in leadership. Emotional health. Proverbs 4:23 say, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from your heart. You have to guard your heart, where your emotions are. And because everything that you do, it flows your heart. The word guard carries the idea of protecting something valuable. Listen, guard means you're protecting something valuable. Your heart is not just emotional, it's the source of your leadership flow. Your heart is not just emotional, but it's the source of your. And a lot of people, when your heart is not guarded, some people will lead from an emotional place. Everything flows from your heart. Your tone, your decision, your reactions, they flow from your heart. This means your internal conditioning will eventually show up in your external leadership. Your internal condition, it will eventually show up in your external leadership. So unhealthy leadership don't always look broken. Sometimes it looks frustrated, easily irritated, withdrawn, overly controlling, because you're leading with your emotion. And listen, I'm gonna say that again. Sometimes the unhealthy leader does not always look broken. Sometimes they look frustrated, easily irritated, withdrawn, and overly controlling. And many times the issue is not the people, it's the conditions of the leader heart. I believe I'm gonna say that again because somebody listening needs to hear this. Many times the issue is not the people, it's the condition of the leader's heart. Unprocessed emotion doesn't disappear, they redirect it. When you don't process your emotions and you don't deal with your emotions, it don't just disappear, you redirect it. It becomes a redirected. It shows up in how you speak. It shows up in how you lead. It shows up in how you respond to certain things. And if your heart is not healthy, your leadership will carry the weight of what you have not healed. You'll be leading while bleeding, and you'll bleed on the people. Sometimes you can lead with bleeding, but you can't bleed on the people. If your heart is not healthy, your leadership will carry the weight of what you have not healed. Healthy leaders make it a priority to process what they feel. You can have emotions, but you need to process what you feel. You need to process the hurt. You need to process the anger. You need to process what you feel. You need to process that and reflect honestly and bring the inner condition before God. Let God deal with your inner condition. Too many of us are taking our inner conditions to other people that are not skilled in how to deal with our emotions, and it causes us to react. And they may be dealing with some of the same things, and so they cause you to react wrong because they're reacting wrong, and you're not healthy as a leader. So ask yourself, am I leading from peace or from pressure? That's really important. Am I leading from peace or am I leading from pressure? A lot of us are leading from pressure and we're not leading from peace. We should be leading from a peaceful place and not from a pressure of that I need to lead. The third thing is boundaries protect your assignment. Luke 5:16. But Jesus often withdrew to a lonely place and prayed. Notice the word often. This was not occasionally, but it was a pattern that Jesus had. He didn't do it occasionally. It was a pattern that he had. Even with demands, crowds, and expectations, Jesus created distance. Even with the demands, even with the crowds, even with the expectation, Jesus created distance. Many leaders struggle here because they feel guilty saying no. It's okay. You need to learn to say no sometimes. You let your yay be yay, and no. You need to learn how to. No is okay. No is not a cuss word. No is not a bad word. Learn how to say no. They try to be available to everyone, respond to everything, and meet every need. I'm not just talking to you, but I'm talking from a place of experience. I'm talking of a place that I've been there. You don't know how to say no. You want to be there for everybody. You want to do for everybody, but you need time. But here's the truth. Not every need is your assignment. I used to think that everything I encounter was my assignment. People I encounter is my assignment. Not everything and not every need is your assignment. Listen to what I'm saying. It's not yours. It could be somebody else's. Leadership increases demands, but effectiveness requires focus. Leadership increases demand, but effectiveness requires focus. Without boundaries, leaders become accessible to everyone, but effective to no one. When we don't have boundaries, we become accessible to everyone, but effective to no one. Boundaries are not rejection. Boundaries are protection. They protect your time, your focus, your energy, your assignment. Every yes you give to the wrong thing is a no to something God actually assigned you to. I believe I'm gonna say that again. Every yes you give to the wrong every yes you give to the wrong thing is a no that to something God actually assigned you to. So ask yourself the question: am I saying yes to things God didn't call me to? That's something we need to look at. We need to evaluate our schedules, am I saying yes to something, a thing that God did not call me to? The fourth thing is we got to stay rooted in our identity. Galatians 1:10 says, am I now seeking the approval of man or God? Do you know who you are? Are you seeking the approval of God, or are you seeking the approval of man? This is the tension every leader must resolve. Am I leading from approval or from assignment? Am I leading from approval, or am I leading from my assignment? Am I trying to be approved by the people, or am I leading from the assignment that God gave me? When identity is uncertain, leaders begin to overextend. They begin to compromise. They begin to lose clarity. They become reactive because they are trying to satisfy people instead of fulfilling the purpose that God given you. You're trying to please all these people, and you're getting frustrated. You're losing clarity, becoming ready because you're trying to satisfy people instead of fulfilling your purpose. But when your identity is rooted in God, leadership becomes stable. Decisions become clear. Pressure loses its power. Pressure no longer have power. Leaders who are secure in their identity do not constantly approve to functions. Let me say that again. Leaders who are secure in their identity do not need constant approval to function. I said leaders who are secure in their identity do not need constant approval to function. You can function without people approving you. They lead from conviction. When you are rooted in who God called you to be, you can lead people without being controlled by them. Lord have mercy. When you are rooted in who God called you to be, you can lead people without being controlled by them. Ask yourself, am I leading from conviction or from pressure? Leadership is not just about what you build. It's about who remains while building it. You can build something successful and lose yourself in the process. You can serve people and still neglect your own soul. But healthy leaders make a decision. I will not lose myself trying to lead others. I will rest. I will guard my heart. I will set boundaries. I will stay rooted in who God called me to be, because leaders who remain whole lead with clarity, lead with strength, lead with longevity. This is Kingdom Insight, leadership, structure, and clarity.